Hi there, I'm Ben Pearson. Welcome to the Tech World Human Skills Podcast. Every episode we talk through how to thrive in the tech world, not just survive. Now, if you want me to work with your team, just give me a shout. I love to help teams be more influential, memorable and successful with their stakeholders. Head over to www.techworldhumanskills.com to book a chat. Hi folks, and welcome to the Tech World Human Skills Podcast. We're in the colder, darker season now. So, of course, I've got a cold and I sound like Barry White. Younger listeners might need to look him up. But anyway, never mind that. Today, we're asking the question, will AI eat consultancy jobs? Now, there are many people using their skills to help businesses to deploy the latest tech. So, what's the future look like for them? Now, our guest today is founder of a new company, Stealth Labs, and has got a really interesting perspective on this. Historically, he's worked in digital intelligence at BAE, and he's been an AI solutions engineer at Microsoft. So, please, can you welcome to the show, Steve Chan. Steve, it is a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm just casually applauding myself there, but thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, for people that haven't come across you before, could you explain to people a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So Steve Chan, always obsessed with technology. So been on a lifelong journey, kind of learning, using, adopting technology. Did a computer science degree, naturally spent a lot of my career in government in consulting. So doing digital transformation type projects, building capability for other organizations, centering around AI at the time, things like natural language processing, image recognition, etc. As you mentioned, I spent the last 5 years, just left Microsoft, most recently as an AI solutions engineer. So part of Microsoft during that huge LLM boom where we saw large language models, multimodal models come onto the market, explode in terms of things like ChatGPT, Copilot, etc. And I've now left to the dark, scary route of forming my own organization with another person. So I'm co-founder of a company called Stealth Labs, where we're looking to really get out there and help organizations adopt, use AI, and again, build bespoke capabilities using AI tools and techniques that are out there.
Brilliant. Well, it's brilliant to have you with us. It's interesting. Although we've both worked, Although we've both worked at Microsoft, we never crossed paths. I don't think when we
just missed each other, didn't we?
Yeah, but we got introduced through a mutual friend who said, you ought to talk to Steve. And I think the reason for that was, the focus of this podcast is the human skills, the soft skills, the professional skills, whatever you want to call them, but the skills that you need to thrive in tech. Now, there is the rise of AI, as we've already talked about, but there are some jobs which are, I would say primed to be AI-ified, if I can use that term, which is maybe those things in the back office, maybe those things where it's very rule-based, it's very formulaic, they are prime. But when we're talking about consultancy, to me, that's a lot more about humans talking to humans. And so, and the company that you've started, just to put this on context, is an AI service that can do AI consultancy. Is that right? Can you explain that to people and explain it to me a bit?
Yeah, so we've actually launched two things. So Stealth Labs is our consultancy vehicle, and that is very much about human interaction. So getting out there, doing the business change and the business transformation of building capability and getting that out to organizations, ideally across the globe. We'll start small, just UK for now. We have actually also built a product, which we're calling Mickey, MICHIE. .ai, which looks to take some of the, as you described, the more process-driven outputs of consulting, the more research type tasks, the document creation, the dare I say, more boring type back office type things, and automate those using AI agents.
Okay. So let's maybe start to dig into it, because the position I'm going to come from is that consultancy is not the lowest hanging fruit of AI, right? There are things that are lower hanging fruit to AI, and that those human customer facing type roles are harder to A. So that's the position I'm going to be coming from as we start this conversation, Steve. I warn you now, I'm going to be like Piers Morgan, the challenge I shall bring. But that's probably my genuine position as I sit here before we start getting into this is harder to AIify because of the human interface. But maybe let's start with breaking it apart a little bit and maybe getting a bit of a common ground. Could you tell me, in your mind, what does a consultant do today? If you were going to break up the constituent parts of what a typical consultant does today, what would they be?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think consultancy means a different thing to different organizations and different people that you speak to. And there's obviously different bits of consulting. We're focusing more on the technical consulting offering and that side of things. But generally, you'd hire a consultant or you'd hire a consulting organization when you need to adopt change within your organization, or you've recognized a problem, and you, as the underlying user or the end organization, don't know how to solve that. So you're bringing in external expertise into your organization to try and help you work towards a solution, solve a problem. And that may be because you don't know how to do it yourself. It might be because you just don't have the time, the resources to dedicate internally to solve something, and therefore you want to bring someone externally on board. In terms of breaking that down and what that looks like, you can start to get quite what's the word? I was going to go for algorithmic, but that's probably a bit too specific. But you can get quite process driven, I think, in terms of what that looks like. You define and understand a business problem. You do that by interviewing the users, asking them what their issues are, what the problem is that they're trying to solve, and really what those pain points are. From that, you might do some market research. You might go and look at what's already out there. Are there off-the-shelf solutions that you can implement? Is there something in the open source community that you can fork and build? Does this need to be bespoke? So you do a bit of ideation. You think about what that solution might be. You then might play that back to the users in language that they understand to get the go-ahead and say, yep, that sounds like the right kind of solution we want. You then probably need to do some kind of high-level architecture designs or low-level architecture designs. So for your listeners who've never come across that term before, really just drawing out the components of a system on a piece of paper, making it abundantly clear what it is you're going to be delivering, what resources you're going to be using. Are you going to be using the cloud? Are you going to be using on-prem? Are you going to be building your own models? What databases, etc., are part of this solution? You probably want to take that through a security review, through a stakeholder review, go on and build that solution. And then you start thinking about business change and how you bring that new solution to users. So how do you train them? How do you onboard them? How do you bring a new piece of technology to a workforce and enable them to start with success? So giving them the right tools, the right training to be able to understand what that tool is, what that new application or new service does, and allowing them to really hit the ground running. And I think when you break it down like that, yes, there is a human element. And I don't think right now anyone is saying that any of these services are going to go away. But a lot of that is process and research driven. And like any algorithm, with enough good source data, with a history of this is what a high-level design looks like, this is what an ideation document looks like, this is how we might interview users, these are the sorts of questions we might ask, you can start to kind of see in your mind how you maybe start automating part of that.
And so, and so you guys have built out a product, Mickey.ai, that starts to take those components and automate them. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's still very human driven, but the idea is, previously where you'd need a huge team, a consulting team to do different functions. Instead of scaling with people, you can have a smaller team that scales with AI agents. So what I mean by that is building the documentation based on the human inputs, doing the research, the market research, the industry research automatically, and then presenting things back to that consulting team.
So what would be the primary? So I'm sort of just trying to think through the description that you gave of what a consultant does. Understanding the customer business, capturing the requirements, ideating, coming up with a low level, high level design, all of that stuff. From that, what would be? I'm going to use the term again. Low hanging fruit of consultancy. What would be the things that just make sense to just AIify straight away?
Good question. I think, again, we're talking about document generation, research, and outputs based on inputs that humans are still providing. Okay. So I don't think we're saying right now that everything is going to be automated, although later on I think we will talk about a potential world and what that looks like. But if your listeners and viewers can imagine how people have adopted ChatGPT, and really that's enabled individuals to be able to research and ask questions on a level that they haven't been able to do before, either because that was completely time consuming, having to search through standard search engines, look through pages and pages of results, scour through web pages, etc. Or maybe because they didn't actually know what they wanted to ask and they needed something that was going to bring suggestions to them. If we apply that to the consultancy space, then yes, having humans on the front line is still powerful. And at the end of the day, humans still want to interact and talk to humans. But taking things like notes or transcripts from user interviews and turning that into an output that is presentable and can be signed off within an organization, or ideating with an AI system where maybe you've got some ideas, but you need that augmentation of what else is out there, and very rapidly being able to research pretty much the entire web very quickly allows for some very kind of high end and powerful results.
And so the idea being, I guess you've got a human front end asking the questions. Maybe AI has helped you to generate some of those questions that you need to ask, so that you do capture everything that you do need to know, and then right through to, based on the input that you've got and the transcripts that are created, then would the AI be able to generate the high-level design, the low-level design, based on its understanding of your tech solution as well?
Exactly. So the human is still driving decisions. This is what we want to implement. We understand the organization. We understand the users. You could argue that there are hundreds, thousands of solutions to potentially any problem. So bringing that down is down to the human knowledge and understanding of the organization that they're working with. But in terms of building those high-level designs, low-level designs, building applications, building training plans, training packages, business change plans for a human to then go and implement, we can very easily and very quickly now generate those using AI agents.
So AI's helped us get the requirements. It's helped us then with that kind of low-level design, maybe that high-level design as well. What about all the intricacies? So often the biggest challenge are things like integration and things like that. Are you thinking that you load the AI with all of that kind of stuff, or is that where the human brain is all that complexity? Is that going to be covered, do you think, by AI, or is that where humans are going to add value?
It's interesting because I think the complexity and the knowledge within the human brain, of course, is great. I'm a bit biased myself, being a human, but there is a finite limit to any individual's knowledge, right? And I think I always hear the story of when ChatGPT first came out. I think they were running GPT 3.5 or GPT 4 with that application. Everyone was like, this is amazing. It's going to be the end of the world, etc., etc. 3 to 6 months later, everyone kind of got over it. And new versions have come out and different tools have come out, and people have had the same reaction to that tooling. I think what we're seeing right now is, yes, those integration points are going to be part of the human mind. That deep, intricate understanding of an external organization, where the pain points are, where things tend to fall over, is going to come from that human consulting angle. But as time goes on, who knows? We're inevitably training these models with more and more information. And yes, they may have a generic view, as in they may have a wide-ranging view, as opposed to a view just of your organization or the organization that you're working with. But eventually, those data points will become enough for AI to be able to think about, in these sorts of industries, I tend to see these issues, or I've been trained on these issues, and therefore to stop these issues coming up, or to prevent these issues, I'm going to design these things into the integration that I suggest.
And so, therefore, I guess the benefit of that is you need less time from each human on each consultancy engagement. On each gig you do, there's less legwork. And so I'm just sort of thinking back. I spent many years as a consultant myself. I spent many years as a leader of consultants myself. And if I sort of think of some of the key challenges that we used to have, the first one I'm going to say was a business challenge that we'd always get, particularly from our executive leaders, would be, you are too expensive. There is not enough margin. We run a software business. We want 99.99% margin, and a consultancy business doesn't run anywhere near that level of margin because you've got expensive humans. So it seems to me, this sort of addresses that a little bit. Other challenges that I think that we used to get was, have your consultants got the right skill set, right? So you'd have somebody that's skilled on solution A, but consulting, and is now busy with customer one, and now solution B is required with customer two. Well, they can't get there because they're already on customer one. And so somebody else comes in that doesn't have that level of expertise, that level of depth on the solution. So I can almost sort of see, well, margin, if you're able to do it a bit cheaper and you're able to get more people to do it and scale, already I can sort of see there's going to be some value to it. Those are the sorts of benefits that you're seeing. What are you seeing would be the benefits of using AI well with consultancy?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and the slight elephant in the room there is consultancy is actually quite inefficient, I would say, when it comes from a pure business perspective. So like you say, if you think about the big players, obviously we won't name any of them for the sake of saving you from being sued on the podcast. But generally, the way consultancies work is they may have an overhead team, but the majority of people will be on what they call fees. So those people are sold out to organizations to do a role. You then start getting, as you mentioned, overwhelming pressure from those running the business because they're looking at profit margins, etc., to keep people on fees 100% of the time. So as a consultant, and I'm sure you remember this, you end up working for one organization, but you actually spend all of your time in another organization doing a job within that organization that you've been almost sold out to. And then that begs the question of, how do you train? How do you upskill? How do you, from a business perspective, ensure that you can answer new requirements, you can expand? To date, consultancies have expanded with people, with individuals, which then puts them round that cycle of introducing those problems again. With AI, the best way that I would frame it is, what we have right now is junior level consultants or junior level consulting type outputs that never have to sleep. They never take a break. You don't need to fund their upskilling. LLMs are trained on pretty much the entirety of the open internet. They can reach out to external sources. They can look through any data that you provide within your organization. So you don't have to pay for onboarding. You don't have to pay for training. They don't take time off. They don't take breaks. They can work 24/7. And I'm aware that I'm describing a bit of a dystopian future there, and we'll get to that. But I think it's, well, you tell me, but in my mind, I think it's plain see from a pure business perspective of where that would then allow you to let's have some specialized, perhaps more expensive consultants, but a lower number, and a number that we can easily manage, and augment them with these AI agents, as opposed to going out and hiring tens of thousands of people and then having to worry of where you're selling them, where they're going, how do we train them, how do we upskill them, etc.
Yeah, I think I put several hats on. So if I put on when I led a consultancy practice, so if I put that hat on first, and I go, right, this is really good. It's solved a lot of my training issues. It's solved a lot of my hiring issues because I need to hire less people. It's solved a lot of my margin issues. And I've got a team of those experts, so when we're moving to the harder bits, the more edge cases where you need that real veteran expert in there, I've already got those. So I'd sort of look at that with that hat on and go, I get how this is useful, and I get why this is valuable. If I then have my hat on as somebody looking at the future of tech, somebody with kids, like I've got kids that are going to be, I worry a little bit, because if you've AI-ified all of that junior type stuff, you've cut your supply of experts. You'll never have any experts because all of the junior work goes to the AI. So how do you go from nothing to expert when you've got nothing to cut your teeth on anymore, because all of that work has gone? So there's part of me going, it's wonderful, but there's part of me going, well, that's a tremendously short-term view if we want a workforce that has the skills to do the things that we need it to do anymore. That would be, have you got any thoughts into maybe how do people early in career interface or learn with the AI so that we've got a pipeline of talent for the bits the AI can't ever do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the first thing to think about, and I wish some of these AI offerings existed back when I was at university, is that we for the first time we've probably got a very easy way for anyone on the planet that's got access to an internet connection to be able to upskill in any topic, and to be able to use artificial intelligence to further themselves, without having to, dare I say, and I say this as someone with a degree, but go through expensive university courses or pay for external education. There's almost a free source there of unlimited education, and you can talk to AI today either by text or with voice, and ask for bespoke training courses that cater to you, that speak to you in a way that you understand and you learn. I think one of the things that we have realized as a society recently is that maybe the way that we've always educated people in the past doesn't work for every single person, and those people that potentially fail within the British school system, etc., that they're not necessarily, for lack of better term, unintelligent. They just haven't been taught in a way that resonates with them, or that they can receive that information. So I think the first thing to hammer home is that AI presents a very big opportunity for everyone, potentially across the planet, to be able to learn and upskill. In terms of where it's going, I guess this is all opinion based, and this is where we get into, maybe you go back into your Piers Morgan-esque style critiques. But personally, what I think we will see is more and more smaller organizations where they've gone through education, they've educated themselves, they've picked a niche, and maybe they're going out on their own or with their own small organization and educating, doing transformation, helping organizations with that niche. And that niche may be artificial intelligence. It may be things like cybersecurity, which is still a big component of what happens out there, right? And securing organizations' IT and systems is a big thing that consultants do today. I think what we will potentially see less of, I'm talking 5, 10, 15 plus years, are those huge consulting firms who hire tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people and effectively ship them out to external organizations. Because one, that power of learning also goes to those organizations too. So if you're an organization that hires consulting today, you can probably get a very base level understanding of any topic that you want to think about through AI without having to hire a consultant. So that's something that's already happening. What I think we'll see is consultancy be called upon for very niche specific topics or subjects or areas. Like I've got a very good understanding, for example, in how to implement cybersecurity within the French government in the south of France. Okay, great. That's a skill that maybe people will look to consultants to use. So I think we'll see a lot more of those niche type consultancies as opposed to the larger ones.
Yeah, and I guess, excuse me, I guess I can already think of an example. So an example just from me last week. I've just about to start working with a big new client, very big company. And so to be onboarded as part of a supplier to do some work with them, I needed all these policies that I didn't have, right? I'm a really small company. And one of those, for example, was a modern slavery policy, right? So I'm a tiny, there's just a couple of us here, tiny little business, and we know slavery is bad, and we don't, we're not in any way. But suddenly I needed a policy on that. And I'm like, well, what is a policy on that? Now, for me, AI was perfect for that because it could give me a policy. I could read through it. I understood it. And that was good enough for what I needed. Now, maybe if I had hundreds of thousands of people with supply chains throughout many different parts of the world, from mining through to manufacture through to marketing, for example, I need to give that a lot of thought about what is my slavery policy. And that's where we're talking about we need an expert consultant to consider all of those things. But for me, me on the Todd, something really simple and from AI is perfect. And I didn't need to pay thousands to get a consultant to give me that. That was where, so it just seems to me that happened to me this week, and it's something that sort of transfers maybe to that consultancy, all that low hanging fruit. We can just AIify, which means we concentrate on the complex things.
Exactly, and building on that example, I think that there's loads of examples of things like that today that people are putting into practice and people are seeing. From my own perspective of co-founding a new startup, maybe go 10, 15 years ago, maybe even more recently, 5 years ago, we'd probably be looking at onboarding external advice to help us with things like the statements that you've just described, or how do I pay tax, or like how does Companies House website work, and what is this CH12345 form that I'm expected to fill out, and that kind of knowledge, I guess, was ring fenced within a bunch of specialists who had done it time and time before, but now. And don't get me wrong, for the sake of the record, we have obviously sought the right advice. But it is very easy to go and use AI to generate documents, the kind of documents that you need to file, to ask those, dare I say, stupid questions that you really don't want to admit that you don't know the answer to. The AI isn't going to judge, it isn't going to be like, Ben, that's a stupid question. Like, of course you need a modern slavery statement. Why are you even asking me this question? You don't get that kind of response. If you apply that to the consulting world, if I pick a specific example, some customers out there, some enterprises, some organizations, they just want to define their requirements. And the answer to that previously has been, well, have a team of business analysts, have a team of business consultants. They'll go out there, they'll interview your users. Again, they'll identify those pain points. They'll ask the right sort of questions to draw things out of your users. But if you think of even today, I can have a conversation with ChatGPT that flows pretty well. And I can start going down a route where I talk about, here's a pain point that I've got in my life. Can you help me develop it? Can you help me articulate what that problem is? And it will go backwards and forwards, and it will feel like it's brainstorming with me. It will ask the right sorts of questions to be able to capture those things. And if I just say, capture the output of this in a standard business requirements document, a BRD, which would be a standard consulting output, I will get something that is good enough, I would say. It's not going to be right now the super polished version that I don't need to go and review and check over and maybe go, hang on a minute, that bit looks a bit wrong, let me change that. But it's going to be good enough to get me to a point where I've now got something that articulates my requirements, and I can take that to the next stage, whatever that next stage may be.
Yeah. Well, so thinking then about a future where we've got consultancy, where AI does a lot more of the heavy lifting, what are going to be the skills that people listening to this podcast, people that want to be in these customer-facing consultancy type roles, what are going to be the skills that they need, in your opinion, in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question. We brainstormed about this a couple of weeks ago, right, when we kind of had the pre-call. And I think the uncomfortable truth in general in many industries is that many jobs are potentially going to disappear. And I want to say that because I don't feel like enough people are saying that. If you look at the headlines today, what you'll see is that this speeds people up. This helps people achieve more, but not that AI can potentially replace people and jobs. And there's good reason for that, right? We don't want to cause widespread panic. But I think ultimately, in the capitalist society that we kind of live in, and this is where I get slightly political, every business, every organization is always looking to cut their costs. And we've seen that in big tech in the last 5+ years, right? If you look over to what's happening in the US, there's cuts all the time. Well, there's cuts all the time worldwide as organizations become more and more efficient. I think, again, the best way to handle that today is to learn how to use AI, to learn how to use these tools alongside what the thing is that you want to do. So if you want to be a software engineer, for example, understanding how tools like Claude Code or GitHub Copilot can help you become a better developer, I think will become very attractive to employers in the future. I do think there's potentially going to be a point as to where, I don't want this to happen, and this is going to sound slightly harsh, but you're either on the bus or you're not. As in, when development organizations, when startups, when all engineering houses realize that when they used to have a team of 15, they now only need a team of 7. If those 7 people efficiently use AI tools, then the role's going to go down the route of, you can have this job, but you need to know and learn and be able to adapt to using this tool alongside your role. So I think today, the best thing to do, again, is to utilize it as a learning experience. Work out how your job can be augmented, or how your role can be augmented with what is coming on the horizon, and prepare and adapt yourself for that.
Yeah. I think that key bit you said there is adapt. I think to thrive, you're going to have to adapt. So, and that's a skill, right? People can build their adaptability. It's not like some people are adaptable and some aren't. Everybody can say, well, and make a conscious decision. I am going to adapt. I am going to embrace change. I am going to learn. I'm not going to think that I know it all and that everything else is awful. So it seems to me that is an absolutely key skill. And then the other bit is the bits that are harder to AIify. I still think they are the skills that are going to be really useful. So if you've got AI doing the heavy lifting on the low-level design, the high-level design, the low-level design, for example, but somebody still needs to go and deliver that back to the business in a compelling way, answer questions, generate energy, motivate people, manage objections, difficult personalities. Those are very human skills that need to wrap around that AI design as well. So it seems to me that adaptability and those bits that are very hard to AIify, they're a good set of skills to help develop.
I think so, but it's difficult, and I don't want to come across as all doom and gloom. And bear in mind to your listeners and viewers, I'm in that position as well, right? So,
yeah, but we all are,
yeah. As we've covered, I've just launched a consultancy. So if anything, that's why this is top of mind. But if you think about how, like, we call it human computer interaction has evolved over time. Right now, when people are interacting with AI, they're either typing something into a prompt box, and by AI I mean the LLMs, the ChatGPT type applications of the world. They're asking a question by typing something out, or they're clicking on a button, probably a microphone button, and they're speaking to it in a similar way that we're having this conversation. And you can look at that and go, well, people are always going to want to talk to humans, so of course that human role is going to be there. But this is evolving at impressive, a crazy rate. And the next thing is maybe we have virtual avatars, that look lifelike and that can dial into Zoom calls, team calls, etc.
Yep.
Microsoft Teams already has a virtual avatar function, but that just replaces you and your video feed. If that then becomes a vehicle for an AI model to be able to speak to you and talk back to you, then that's kind of a next stage in the evolution of how you interact with computers in general. Give it 5-10 years. We've already seen, I think that there's quite a comical video of a robot that's recently pledged to launch that isn't looking quite well. There's a video of something loading a dishwasher and it can't work out how to kind of close the dishwasher type thing. But again, give that 10-15 years, who knows? Maybe we'll have autonomous androids. I mean, Elon Musk keeps promising this Tesla bot, so maybe that will become a thing. And I think as more R&D, as more research, as more and more goes into this, the concept of speaking to a human versus speaking to a AI or a machine or a robot or whatever you want to call it are going to become quite blurred and very similar ways of interfacing with having a conversation, shall we say. I mean, imagine the kind of iRobot type situation.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, do you know what, mate? We are out of time, I think, as I glance at the clock. So should we wrap this episode up? So just as a quick summary, what would be your key takeaways for people from this episode?
I think the key takeaway is, let's not panic. AI presents quite a huge opportunity to many people to be able to upskill, to be able to learn, and to be able to do things that previously they may have had to hire external expertise or different organizations, and to be able to go out there and achieve big things by themselves. So take that, use AI to learn, use it to upskill. Think about how in your day job you can adapt. Think about what's coming, where it might go. Stay at the bleeding edge, and just continuously try and learn.
Yeah,
I think that will be my key takeaway here.
Yeah. I would agree. As I reflect on our conversation, it's that adaptability, isn't it? It's that ability to adapt is going to be absolutely crucial. And it's just been interesting to think about, well, you think of a consultant, human customer facing, God, that's going to be a lot harder to AIify. But of course, if you break that out into different components, of course, some of it you can get the AI to do lots of the heavy lifting, which then means that's less man hours, which means you can either charge the same and it takes you less man hours, which gives you a higher margin, or you can charge a lot less, which means you can scale it out to customers with less deep pockets and helps you with the scale. So very interesting to think about that. So before final thing, if people want to get hold of you, they're interested in the things you've been talking about, the company you're setting up, how can people get hold of you?
So best way would be to go to stevechan.ai. That's my kind of personal website. Be a bunch of things on there. There is a speaking section of which this podcast will be linked. I'll put together some thoughts based on what we've spoken about today, maybe some articles that reference some of the things we've spoken about. And there's some easy ways of getting in contact with me and booking some time in my calendar there.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, now the final thing for me to say is Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Don't go yet. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and rate the show. It really helps us grow and book new great guests. And remember, if the podcast isn't enough for you and you want weekly microlearning delivered straight to your inbox, sign up to the Tech World Human Skills Weekly. Head over to www.techworldhumanskills.com to sign up.